Japanese craftsmanship bridges the past and present. From ceramics to indigo dyeing, these traditions are kept alive through years of dedication. This presentation explores how master artisans preserve these techniques while carrying them forward into the modern world.
Let's see, we'll get started here. This is Steve Pollock. I'm the president of Japan Society of Northern California, and I welcome you to our program on master crafts, traditional and contemporary. We're very excited to have Steve Bimel from Japan Craft 21 and his colleagues back for another program in our series on traditional Japanese crafts. And we have a wonderful audience here in the room today. And I'd like to thank our partner organizations for helping to promote this event and encouraging their members to attend. Japan Society of Hawaii, Japan Society of Oregon, Japan American Society of Oregon, Japan American Society of Colorado, Japan American Society of Houston, Japan American Society of Kentucky, and Japan American Society of Washington, D.C. So thank you to all of you for collaborating with us on this event, and we're excited to bring you another program. So today's program will look at some true amazing craftspeople and works by these people in a variety of different traditional crafts in Japan. And let me turn it over to Steve Bimel to take it from here and share his expertise with us about these wonderful craftspeople in Japan. Steve?
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much. I think the impetus for this presentation was to explain or to show how the so-called traditional crafts of Japan are really very much part of the 21st century. The techniques, the skills, the focus, the intention to make them, the history behind them is the same, but the manifestation, the creativity is very much in the 21st century. And today we are going to be covering a number of topics. And we'll probably get to most of these. And if we have time, we'll add statuary and stone, but we'll get to everything at least through urushi lacquer. So a basket like this was created for what flower arrangement. These are flower arrangement baskets. These are one-of-a-kind baskets. And baskets like this came to Japan ever since about the 1500s, the 1500s, from China. And this is a very typical Chinese style with it's symmetrical, it's has braiding on it. It's very fine, a very beautiful basket. Well, these baskets were imported to Japan very much in the 1700s for a group of people, a group of literati that had their own tea ceremony. This is not the tea ceremony of powdered tea, which is whisk. This is a Chinese style leaf tea ceremony, which is still exists in Japan today. Senchakai, it's called. And so these were imported from China, and they're very, very expensive. You can imagine those days, extremely expensive. And so what happened during the Edo period, that Japanese forgers started to make fake baskets, fake Chinese baskets. And eventually the fake baskets were as good or sometimes even better than the original. So by the time the Meiji period came in 1867, 1868, those basket makers came out of the basket closet and they began to sign their own names to these. And so we start to see works like this in the 20th century. So we see two styles and actually three styles that exist. One is the Chinese style you saw, and then this is the Japanese style. It's very much a Japanese aesthetic. It's asymmetrical. It has a folk influence. The handle is made from the root of a bamboo plant, and so it's very, very husky and strong and dynamic. In the 20th century, we see several extraordinary artists who came forward. We see hundreds of artists, actually, craftspeople making these flower baskets in the 20th century, but a few who really were outstanding to the point where today they're still superstars in a sense today. The one was Izuka Kansai. So he created this in around the 1920s. So it has the same kind of asymmetry in this. And then 10 years later, he evolved into a style like this. He had a very broad range of styles. And then into the mid 20th century, he was doing work like this. Then we come into the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century. We have Honda Shoryu, who really brought everyone forward in a way, in a very contemporary aesthetic. He and several others were path leaders. Another artist who was very prominent in the late 20th and early 21st century was Tori Ippo. His works were, these are 3 layers, 2 and 3 layers in these wave-like patterns, contrasting different colors of bamboo, natural and dyed bamboo. And it took him 3 months to make a piece, 2 months to figure out how to make it, and 1 month to make it. All these artists are making one-of-a-kind pieces, and they reinvent themselves every time they make a new piece. This is Shono Tokuzo from Kyushu. He's the 2nd generation, does beautiful work in mostly undyed work in the natural bamboo color. Ueno Masao adds gold to his work in this very contemporary 21st century piece. So these pieces are functional or non-functional. You can see there's a hole in the middle, and a tube can be placed in there to place flowers. Chikunsai IV is probably the most famous, internationally famous artist working today. He did this work with Kaijima Sawako, who is actually one of our contest judges. She's a contemporary artist, and they created this together, collaboration. And I think many of you are familiar with his work. He does these huge installations. He's did it in San Francisco Asian Art Museum, at the Met in New York, in London. He's doing these around the world, and he's becoming very, very famous for that. 4th generation, all 4 generations in his family were extraordinary, have been extraordinary artists to this day. They're renowned. So barrels or buckets. 54 years ago, buckets like this were in every house, every little restaurant had them, and you could still see them in a lot of restaurants. And it's not as common in people's homes anymore, but our first prize winner from 2 years ago, Nakagawa Shuji, creates these extraordinary contemporary buckets. He has a design background. He's 3rd generation bucket maker, and through his work, he's attracting young people to not only attracting young people to become bucket makers, but he's created a fantastic market for these beautiful pieces. So buckets, which in Kyoto, they had 3 bucket makers about 20 years ago, and now there are 5 bucket makers. So it's one of those crafts which is on the upturn. He also created for us, for a couple of our exhibitions, these huge bucket rooms. This is a room, it's a 4.5 tatami mat room that holds 5 people, and this room can be put together, taken apart in about 2 hours. But today's glass artists and glass craftspeople are really becoming very prominent in the world, creating just absolutely exquisite works with a real Japanese sensibility. This is the pate verre technique, where you make a wax mold, and then you make a wax model, and then you make a mold to hold that. And then you melt the wax out, and then you could place crushed glass, powdered glass, into the mold and heat that to 1500 degrees Celsius, and then remove the mold, and you get this exquisite piece with this. This is Tsukara Midori is a prominent glass artist, and she uses a technique where she's actually making incisions under flowing water to get these tiny incisions. Kuramata Shiro was one of the greatest designers of the late 20th century. He created these glass tables and chairs, the series with the Mihoya Glass Company. Mihoya Glass Company, I think they could make anything. They're very prominent in the architectural field. An architect will come to them and say they need glass in this shape or this formation, and they will make it for them. They've been around about 110 years. So if you look at the scale, this would be a scale that we use often for describing the state of crafts in the world. So we at Japan Craft 21, in English, we use the term master crafts. Master crafts would be defined as a craft that has been passed on for hundreds of years, sometimes over 1,000 years, but just a long, long time. And it requires 5, 6, 10 years of training to be able to achieve that. And of course, we have master crafts in every part of the world, but most of the world, those master crafts have disappeared. And so if you take all the existing master crafts that are still being made today in the whole world and put it on the right side of this scale, I venture to say that Japan has probably as much as most of the world combined. That said, the number of craftspeople has declined from 300,000 in 1979 to this year, we estimate about 40 to 50,000 left. Half of those are my age, and so we don't expect them to be working forever. So we think that by 2028, there'll be 20,000 left. This is a 92% decrease in craftsmen in a 45-year period, which is a very frightening situation. This inspired us to create Japan Craft 21 to try and stem this tide. So our mission is to identify problems, to create strategies, and to take actions. It's very simple. So we're asking you, please tell our story. To one person, to several people, please tell our story that we are working to save these crafts, and we invite people's participation. One thing we do is we started a school, and this is our 5th year, and we train young working carpenters in the nearly lost art of joinery. So we have now trained 28 craftspeople in joinery and mud walls and advanced gardening techniques. It's completely free of charge, and it's on Sunday, so they can attend class without missing work. We have an apprentice program where we support young apprentices. We pay their living expenses while they train with oftentimes elderly craftspeople, and to study with them directly so that they can move into mastership quickly. We have monthly presentations of our own, as in addition to the ones we do with the Japan Society of Northern California, trying to show the world the situation here, the extraordinary culture, the extraordinary craftsmanship that will last forever if we support it. We have projects such as a kiln project in Noto Peninsula, where all the tunnel kilns in that town collapsed after the earthquake in 2024. And so we funded the building of a communal kiln to teach young people how to build kilns, how to fire kilns. And our members put together a package of about $25,000, actually $30,000 to do this. And we just had the first firing was about 2 months ago. So a very successful firing. We have a yearly contest where we choose the best and the brightest of craftspeople with extraordinary talent and ideas to revitalize a craft for the 21st century. So I have a big favor of everyone. If you would take out your telephones right now and go to Instagram and follow Japan Craft 21. We are trying to reach the world. We're trying to reach a big population to tell people what's going on here and to get a movement going. So if you would do that for us, we would really appreciate it. Just click follow, and that would help us so much. Finally, we would love you to become a member. You could be a member for as little as $100. Please go to our website, Japan Craft 21, press the red donate, join us button, and be part of us. Be an active part of a movement to save one of the world's greatest craft traditions. Moving on to joinery. Joinery is part of our wood joinery program in our building arts school. These 5 young men just graduated from our class, a 1-year class, and it's an intensive class. We have 3 graduates, well, 3, students per master teacher, and it's very intense. And they learn the traditional art of joinery. These are working carpenters. These are trained carpenters, but they have not learned traditional carpentry. And so we have every 2 weeks during the school year, we have this contest where it's a timed contest where they have 20 minutes to create the aperture, the hole for a joint. And it's in the beginning, it's very hard and they're really struggling, but by the end of the year, they all did it and beautifully. These perfect joints that they create. So we just finished building the first authentic Japanese house in Kyoto, the first Japanese authentic machiya with no nails, all mud walls. And this is the second one we're building now. All joinery. The joinery is so exquisite to see visually, but it's extremely functional. So basically the frame is very light. The wooden frame is very light, but the infill, the walls are mud walls, and they're very, very heavy. So what happens is you have this light frame and there are no nails, there's no brackets, it's all joinery. And when an earthquake comes, the building flexes and sways, and it spreads the seismic forces across many, many joints. So there's very little damage to any one place. If it's a rigid building, then you'll get massive damage, but you have this, the frame protects the structure by flexing, and the walls are brittle. So the walls could crack and they're easily repaired, but the frame stays solid. So you sacrifice the walls for the frame. And there was a big earthquake in Kobe, as we know, 30 years ago. There are many houses that collapsed, but most of the houses, the traditional houses that collapsed, were in poor repair. The ones that had kept up repair their houses, most of those lived on. So this is a typical mortise and tenon joint. It's called a koshikake kamatsugi joint. This is an L. You can see there's a peg placed in which keeps it stable. This is for a long stretch of a beam where you just want to connect them together. And this is the same thing where we have a lot of push and pull during an earthquake. This would protect that from splitting. Here's for a repair. You see how this is damaged at the bottom, and this is how it would be repaired. So you save most of the building with this repair instead of replacing the whole thing. So in contrast with Western timber framing, which is actually very, very fine building style, but it's not really the best building for an earthquake area. It's because Western building is very stiff and hard. And so in an earthquake, there's a lot of damage. But with the flexible style of the Machiya building or the Japanese joinery building, you don't have that damage. Moving on to metal. Metal has been metal and metal arts have been around in Japan since about 2,300 years. And this is a cast iron kettle for tea ceremony. It's this style, there are probably, I guess I hate to venture to say, but let's say there have to be over 100. I've seen at least that many different styles. So there must be many more. So this is cast iron. And one of our contest winners creates a contemporary version with hammered iron. So he's a master hammer craftsperson. This is a typical Nambuteki kettle. It's also cast iron, and this is the hammered version by Sakai Naoki, our member. So it's same function, but it has a very contemporary sensibility. The handles of both the lid and the piece itself. These are surprisingly well priced. These are I think they're about $600. So this, I bought one while the price was still low. Osumi Yukie is a living national treasure. She works with hammering also. And she has this special technique where she imprints a textile design into the surface. So she uses chiseling. She chisels a grid in the pattern and then polishes to reveal intricate inlay. Iwata Hiroki created this piece. This is a copper piece with gold inlay. So this was hammered to shape, and then the gold was inlaid. By the same artist, he fused many pieces together to form this piece. This piece is by Kaneko. This is there's an iron oxide, and it's also enamel. Enamel is not something you buy at Home Depot. Enamel is made from crushed glass, and it's melted. This is tin, which was plated with silver, oxidized, and then coated with a white enamel. A copper hammered piece covered with green enamel. Weaving. Weaving is a huge subject. We did a whole textile presentation for Japan Society of Northern California last year, and we just barely scratched the surface of that subject. This karaori is a Chinese style which has been done in Japan for 1,000 years in the Nishijin district. It looks like embroidery, but it is woven. It is a woven piece, three-dimensional weaving, which is done in that district to this day. Also, from the Silk Road, there were many textiles which came in the 5, 6, 7, 800s to Japan through the Silk Road. And the Tatsumura family in the early 1900s did extensive research at the National Museum of Antiquities in the Sosho-in. They found these little remnants of these fabrics, and this Tatsumura, the scion of that family, he reinvented the Nara loom, which hadn't been seen in 1,000 years, so they could weave these things again. So dozens of these extraordinarily beautiful historic pieces have been reintroduced back into the Japanese culture, and you see them. Some people will wear them as obi. You'll see them, for example, as a cloth under a vase in a home. It's very common to see Tatsumura remakes. And then the grandson of that original pioneer was Koho, and he created a nonprofit to be able to support the best weavers in Japan, the most talented weavers in Japan. There were just, maybe a handful of these extraordinary people who can weave these three-dimensional pieces. This piece has 100 different colors. It looks three-dimensional, but it's a flat woven piece. This is a contemporary piece by a living national treasure, Tsuchiya Yoshinori, and the warp, which are the long threads on the loom, are dyed in patterns, and the weft is there's no dye on that. So you have very simple dye on that. So you have this combination, mostly for the warp, is how these patterns emerge. So one of the winners of our most recent contest creates textiles from paper. These are washi paper strips that are woven into cotton, and these can be laundered. They last forever. So he takes dyed washi paper and he cuts in strips and he weaves it into with cotton yarn. One of the great techniques in the Nishijin district is to take gold leaf, silver leaf, or platinum leaf and create a beautiful pattern, and then place it on washi paper with lacquer, with urushi lacquer, and then cut it 1/64 of an inch thick, and then weave it into silk. So this has been a almost 500-year-old technique. Dyeing is another huge aspect of Japanese craft culture. So we have traditional yuzen dyeing using brushes and resist, and to create various, you can see there are various gradations of color within each piece. And then we have contemporary yuzen. This is wax resist dyeing. So this piece of cloth is about 30 feet long, and it's dyed with brushes and it's wax resist, as I mentioned. And this is Saito Hiroshi creates these extraordinary contemporary fashions. And actually, the shirt I'm wearing he made that in the same way. In this particular kind of stencil dyeing, the stencils are created by hand, and then this is referred to as Edo Komon. It's a kind of stencil dyeing that's been done in the Edo area or the Tokyo area for the past 350, 400 years. So you could just look at the tiny, tiny dots that are created by a stencil. That you cannot create dots smaller than this in a stencil dye. These are actually the smallest. So this is very much part of the Edo culture for samurai, for feudal lords. And then today we have the work of Hirose Yuichi. Actually, that's misspelled, Yuichi. He is a fourth generation Edo Komon dyer, introducing this. It's the same technique, but using contemporary colors. This is a different kind of stencil dye. You could notice that the dots are irregular. They're not lined up perfectly. And so this randomness gives the piece a sense of like vitality. It's another example of stencil dyeing. And this is referred to as dan bokashi. Bokashi is a blurring technique. You blurring in a gradation of color. So you gradation of blurring. And so if you take this process and you mix it with the stencil process, two different craftspeople will be doing this, two different dyers, you'll come up with something like this, where you have the stencil pattern in the wave pattern, and then you have the gradation dyeing behind it. This is actually my living room. I was recently interviewed for NHK World for a 30-minute documentary. So this will be on TV in another couple of weeks. I hope we get the news out to you. Shibori is a kind of resist dyeing. Tie-dye is one kind of shibori. Arimatsu is the district, along with Kyoto, which is most famous for this. So you'll see this is sewn in a certain pattern, and when the stitches are removed, you get a design like this. So Arimatsu is famous for this, has been doing this for 400 years. And then these are the kinds of things that were traditionally made. These are summer cotton kimono, yukata. And the Suzusan company, which has been in Arimatsu for many generations, is now creating very contemporary works of shibori. Indigo dyeing has been in Japan for about 1,500 years from China. And this is a technique, what you're seeing in front of us is a technique which has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, a dyeing technique. And you will take a bundle of yarn and tie it in places. You would dye the yarn and then remove the ties which create a resist. So you get these patterns in the yarn, and then the patterned yarn is dyed to form these different styles. And there are, if I say there are thousands of variations all throughout Japan, I don't think I'm exaggerating. In the 20th and 21st century, we see Fukumoto Shihoko, who is the leading indigo dye artist in the world. She's shown all over the world. This piece is her standard or her characteristic gradation style. So this was dyed 40 times to create that gradation of color. And she did the same thing with this piece. Every dot is the same gradation of color in miniature. Here's a no theater costume that she created. These are portable tea rooms on hemp in indigo. And this is the winner of our 2025 contest. We just awarded him a few weeks ago at an awards ceremony in Tokyo. He won the contest because he is reviving a certain kind of indigo dyeing that was done for almost 1,000 years, up until about 100 years ago in Kyoto. And whereas indigo dyeing, which is done nowadays, is very consistent wherever you go. The colors are very consistent from place to place, which is wonderful, and they do beautiful work. This old technique enables the dyer to create many different gradations of color, not so gradations, but nuances of color that don't exist in the standard way. So we're very excited about his program, reviving this. He's a young person in his 30s, and he's very enthusiastic to teach other people. This is one of his works. Washi, Japanese handmade paper, is known to most people, I think, around the world. This would be standard Fusuma doors that you would see in any home in Japan. And this would be the work of a contemporary artist, Sarah Breyer, who's lived in Kyoto her entire adult life making washi. And she dyes the fibers and she pours it into water and she creates these on screens, these beautiful pieces. Horiki Eriko is world famous for creating architectural installations of washi. And this is basically, you're just looking at mulberry bark, but the way she does it is so evocative and perfect for contemporary architectural installations. One of our two of our winners, it's actually a pair, a partnership, created this. It's called ikambari, and on the left side you'll see traditional ikambari where colored washi in the upper left-hand corner, colored washi is covers either a bamboo or a paper fiber frame. And then on the lower left, it's coated with persimmon juice, kakishibu. And they make these beautiful, very lightweight baskets or storage boxes. So on the right, what they're doing is they're taking really unsightly modern building materials and doing the same thing, and they're making them beautiful. So you, instead of having just an industrial-looking wall grate, you can cover that with washi and make it really beautiful. So they make partitions, and they have all kinds of ideas for using washi and persimmon juice. Figurative craft. I think we're all familiar with this kind of traditional Japanese doll. Actually, this week is on the 3rd of March is the doll festival, the girls festival in Japan, and where families all over Japan display their heirloom dolls in their homes on shelves. So this tradition, of course, continues to exist in Japan, but there's also with using the same methodology, there are people who make these very unique, one-of-a-kind figurative pieces. They're about 10 inches tall, and the detail is extraordinary when you look at the features, the hands, the expressions. This is almost unknown outside of Japan. Of course, some of you may know of this, but for the most part, this is pretty much unknown in the rest of the world. So there are dozens of these artists who are creating these works. It's made of mostly of a powdered wood pulp. The features are molded and they're carved. Ceramics is another huge aspect of Japanese culture. So I've chosen 5 areas, and some of this, if you saw our presentation on ceramics about a year ago, some of the slides, I'm using some of the same slides, so this may be a review for you. I chose Celadon because it is the absolute obsession with perfection. I've chosen Raku because it's the obsession for imperfection. I chose Hagi because of its warmth. Shigaraki because it's just the pure beauty of raw nature, of fire, of earth, of ash. And Kutani because it's of its functional and decorative sense. So you get 5 very different forms here. All of these are Celadon. So when I say what color is Celadon, if you have something in mind, all of these will be celadon. They will all qualify as celadon. So it could be jade green, honey green, olive green, blue green. And so you adjust the color by the amount of feldspar used in the glaze, and as well as other ingredients. And also the way the timing of the amount of oxygen reduction is done in the kiln. So all this together, you can get anywhere from this kind of beige to eggshell to a deep green or blue. Just very simply, though, the more iron, you'll get more of an olive. The less iron, you'll get more of a green, and even less iron, blue. And it's all depends on the well-timed reduction of oxygen and the amount of feldspar. This is the holy grail of ceramics for the last 1,200 years or more. That this to create perfection through celadon has been something that many people have aspired to. So this type of vase is a Chinese style vase, and it's still being made in Japan. It's been made vases like this in Japan for about 400 years, whereas Korea had celadon maybe 900 years ago, and China had it 1,200 years ago. Japan didn't have it until about the 1600s, so they're late in coming to this world. But today, some of the greatest celadon artists in the world are in Japan. So this is a contemporary piece. This is quite a large piece. Kawase Shinobu is one of the kings of celadon. His works are so delicate and poetic. You notice that there are no crackles in this celadon, whereas in this piece there are crackles. To achieve crackles, you adjust the timing of the cooling of the kiln. The clay body and the glaze cool at different rates. So if you cool it quickly, the glaze can't keep up with the cooling of the clay body, so those little cracks form. So it's the timing of that is very important. Getting the timing just right is very important. And so if you don't want crackles, you cool it slowly. Fukami Sueharu is one of the great masters of ceramics. He's probably one of the most famous Japanese ceramic artists in the world. His works are in the Met and in London, everywhere. Met in New York and in London, all over the US, collectors. These are huge pieces. This is probably about 1 meter wide. And it's hollow. He makes them in molds, and then he grinds it down to the shape he wants with a drill to create these sharp edges. And the coloring is his forte, to be able to achieve these gradations of color. Now, I was at his studio, and he was showing me a piece where the color gradation wasn't so perfect, and he wasn't going to sell it. And I still wonder what happened to that piece, but he only sells the most perfect pieces. So raku is the absolute opposite of celadon. It's imperfection. So the great tea master in the late 1500s, Sen no Rikyu, was totally enamored with imperfection. And so he had a large group of students, about 3,000 followers in the upper class of the samurai and feudal lords in Japan. And the going aesthetic at that time was perfect Chinese ceramics. And he took that as appreciation, he expanded it, he stretched it out to include the raku bowl, which is lumpy and drippy, asymmetrical, but has a beauty that is not static. The beauty increases the more you look at it. And you could feel the imprint of the fingers of the powder on the bowl when you drink it. Unlike the porcelain bowl we just saw, this is cooler to the touch. And he invented raku. He's the person who invented raku. He hired the first raku potter named Chojiro, and 16 generations in that family, they're still making rakuware. And this is by the 15th generation, raku jikinyu. Same raku firing, but with a 21st century aesthetic. So raku jikinyu has been succeeded by his son, Raku Kichizaemon the 16th. And so maybe in a future presentation, we'll show his work. Hagi is an area in Western Japan. It's a kiln town, which was established by Korean potters who were brought to Japan, and they created the first Hagi kilns in and around the year 1600. And there are two families which trace their lineage back to those families. But it all began when Sendo Rikyu fell in love with these inexpensive Korean rice bowls that were made for peasants. And he loved the aesthetic. He loved the naturalness of the warmth, and he elevated it to the highest level of Japanese culture at the time, which was the tea room. And so the Hagi tradition became at that time, and they're still creating works of that aesthetic to this day. And they've expanded as well. So as you could see in the works of Kaneta Masanao, he's a newcomer in Hagi. His family has only been there for 8 generations since the year 1800. So he is a sculptor, and he scoops out the clay to make these very dynamic pieces. Yakishime is ceramics which are produced without applying glaze. So everything you're seeing on here is because of the ash or the fire in a wood burning kiln, and the place it is sits in the kiln. So if you're very close to the fire, you see effects as you just saw. And if it's far from the fire, you'll see something like this. So you can see inside the bowl that it's a very pale color. That's the color of the clay. The outer part, there's very little change in the color. It's a little bit red, which from the fire, but it's still fairly pale. And all these tiny white spots are feldspar, which are purposely left in the clay, and they explode during firing to give it a wonderful texture. Getting a little closer to the fire, we see we had darker color, but we see no feldspar. So the feldspar has been removed in this clay. But you see these two white spots, these two beige spots. These are resist spots. Over these spots, the potter places a very brittle, cracker-like disc, and then during the firing, this becomes a resist, and those brittle discs are removed to create this effect. So getting closer to the fire, we see it's getting darker red. We see the feldspar has been left in, but you see on the right side, there's this creamy beige facet, and that is also done by resist, by placing a bowl or something small shaped object in front of that cold water jar. And so after it's removed, you have the resist. So this would be the front of the cold water jar as it sits in the tea room. This is what the guests see when they come in to see the tea room set up. This piece was placed on its side at the bottom of the kiln. There are two seashells. There's one here and one here, where the bowl sat on its side to prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the kiln. And so all this white part is encrusted onto the bowl from the ash. This piece was also sitting on its side, but if you see that the ash came and it accumulated at the top of the piece, then it vitrified into these riverlets to create these Dragonfly eyes, what they're called. This is a piece which was very close to the fire, and you can see again the seashells where it was sitting and the dripping of the riverlets. Kutani ware is traditional from the Kanazawa area. The colors are there are five, 6 colors that they use: indigo, yellow, green, darkish red, purple, and deep red. And this would be a contemporary form of that tradition. Nakamura Tako these are pieces that often are seen in the Met in New York and other places in museums around the world. Tokuda Yasukichi III was a living national treasure who became such because of his glazes. He introduced the most extraordinary enamel glazes. And of course, enamel, again, is not something you just buy at a hardware store. It's made from very, very, very finely ground glass and melted at a low temperature on the surface of the piece. And he inspired other artists, so this technique is now seen elsewhere in Japan as well. This is the deep blue is from the pooling of the glaze. So this piece is one of the most famous pieces in Japanese culture. It's a celadon piece that was a gift to a shogun in the late 1400, around the year 1500, and he noticed a crack in it, so he returned it to China, and he said, "Could you repair this?" And they said, or no, he asked for another one to be made, and they said, "We could never make another piece like this." So they repaired it with staples, these staples here. Sent back to Japan, he didn't like it, and so the story goes, and it could be a myth, but there's some gold on the rim at the bottom, repair, and that some say this is the first kintsugi piece. Well, that's a nice story. I don't know if it's true. There are many people who doubt that, but it's an interesting story of how this piece is a national treasure of Japan today. Urushi lacquer. I don't say lacquer, I say urushi lacquer, because lacquer is something that, you could buy at Home Depot, 6 ounces for about $2.50, where the same amount of urushi is about $200 to $300. Comes from a tree, 6 ounces in the entire life of the tree. It only produces 6 ounces of this magic fluid to produce some of the most beautiful, durable finishes that exist in the world. So these are typical pieces you would see in a restaurant, maybe in a Japanese restaurant in the States or in someone's home. Here, this is a traditional piece done by the great painter Ogata Korin, and a contemporary piece by Okada Yuji. This is the base is created by taking hemp cloth, coating it with urushi, and shaping the piece. So it's very lightweight. It's called dry lacquer. This is a gold technique, makie. This is mother of pearl, where seashell has been embedded into the black lacquer and then coated with gold leaf. This again, seashells cut very, very thinly and embedded. Extremely difficult work, but pure mastery. This is also a contemporary piece. One of the winners of our contest produces surfboards, and this is a promotional display piece, and it's mother of pearl on a surfboard in urushi lacquer. So there are many artists who are using lacquer as a medium. This was, again, seashell. This piece is about 1 meter wide. It weighs absolutely nothing. It's layers of hemp coated with urushi and polished and polished and polished to have the most gorgeous gloss. Contemporary urushi artist. Ikeda Terumasa is probably the most famous lacquer, urushi lacquer artist in the world now. He uses contemporary numerals, or in this example, these are electronic symbols from a motherboard in a computer, and he creates out of seashells in these functional pieces. So I recently met this young guy, he's Asai Yasuhiro-san. He's about 40 years old, and he creates the most extraordinary works. Every tiny dot was cut separately by him, embedded into the black lacquer. And just the black lacquer alone is over 40 steps of applying lacquer, urushi lacquer, polishing it back, applying, polishing, applying 40 different times. And then he starts to put the lacquer, urushi lacquer, mother of pearl, and the gold application. And this is what it looks like in the inside. He's an amazing guy. He grows his own trees, and he does every process. And he's in a world where people are talking about the difficulty to create work and be successful in the craft world. He has 5 young employees that work for him, and he's the poster boy for urushi, I think. This is one of our winners, Takatori Shunka. He's a 16th generation potter, and this is a combination of a ceramic bowl, and the edge, the whole upper part is urushi. So that concludes our presentation. Steve, back to you.
Thank you, Steve. That was awesome. And I know we had a few more slides that we weren't able to get to today, but we have more presentations with Steve coming up. Another one scheduled in June, and a couple more later this year. So we will get to some of those in a subsequent presentation. But let's talk a little bit about your program today. And I wonder if you can start off and just tell us what's involved in becoming a master craftsperson. I mean, there's so many in Japan, and yet the path to becoming one has to take a long time. Does it always follow through a family line? Does it always involve an apprenticeship? What does it take for somebody to become a master craftsperson, and what's the process involved with that?
Well, that's a great question, and there's no one answer. So there are people who follow through an apprentice program. There are some people that go through a university, and some people do a combination. For example, in ceramics, we find that the apprentice program in Japan for women was very difficult up until let's say after the war, up until the war. It was difficult for women to become apprentices for a number of reasons. You know, Japan was a very traditional society. It's much easier for women to become apprentices now, but talking about those days. So, but with the introduction of university programs in ceramics, many women have entered through the university program, and so that was their training. So and many people still go through the apprentice process. Their apprenticeships are very few nowadays. It's very difficult to find apprenticeships opportunities. Many people just study on their own, and they may go they may study in a college, but oftentimes just graduating from a university program doesn't qualify you to be a great artist. It's almost like your credentials for beginning your study. So people will spend years and years perfecting their art through trial and error. The interesting thing is in apprenticeships, many people are not aware of this, that in Japan, in an apprenticeship, the master doesn't teach. The student observes and they do trial and error. And sometimes the master will give some direction, but for the most part, it's not a teacher-student relationship. It's you're you're in the environment and you just keep practicing. You watch and you practice and you try and copy, but you come up and that way you do a lot of trial and error. And trial and error is probably the greatest teacher of all. Because you know it doesn't work. So if you've trained in the trial and error method, if you're given after you graduate from your so-called graduate and you're in the working world and you're given a problem or a product to produce, you've had so many experiences of doing the wrong thing, but the wrong thing often produces things you didn't expect. So your palette is huge. Whereas if you just learn what the teacher says, you would only learn that, and you wouldn't have the benefit of all those years of tears and sweat.
That's great. So, you gave us the chart of the decline in the number of master craftspeople in Japan, and also the balance between the huge number of craftspeople in Japan relative to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Why do you think Japan is such a kind of origin, a place of origin for so many craftspeople and so many different trades and artistic traditions, metalwork, basketry, ceramics, statuary, textiles? What is about the Japanese mindset or culture do you think really leads to this incredible tradition? And I don't know why it's, what are some of the reasons behind why it's declining these days?
Well, the answer to that, of course, again, is there's no one answer. There's a penchant in the Japanese culture of let's say moving towards a goal and refining and making it better and making it better and never being satisfied with what you've done, but always wanting to make it better. And this is also sometimes referred to as part of what is called the takumi spirit. It's the humble, focused, enthusiastic craftsperson who's just on a mission just towards perfection that he or she will never reach, but always on that. So that's one thing. Another thing is the history of the Edo period. The Edo period was an explosion of craftsmanship. There was a great craftsmanship before the Edo period, but during the Edo period, it was a period of peace. So you had 250 some odd, depending on the era, feudal fiefs. And each one had their feudal lord. They were semi-autonomous, and they all had all these soldiers that needed to have some kind of work because there was no war going on. So many of them turned to crafts, not only to keep them busy, but because it was an economic benefit to each feudal fief to have a product that they could deal with, they could sell. And so these products became, they grew and they grew, and during the Edo period, you just see this blossoming of craftsmanship. And the good news is that during the Edo period, you had the feudal lord and you had the whole feudal system to help you as a craftsperson market your goods, to sell your goods. So there were chains of distribution. But when the feudal period ended, all of that stopped. All the feudal lords were gone. The whole system changed, and then the government stepped in, and they were successful up until a point. Each prefecture, which replaced the fiefs, would promote their local crafts, and there were in each area, there were wholesalers, there were producers that were working, that would give the craftspeople direction. That whole system of the producers, known as tonya, there's the tonya system where you have producers who are taking in orders and they're finding craftspeople to do certain things. That's pretty much gone away, and the craftspeople have been left on their own. And if you have training to make something, you don't necessarily have training to market it. You don't have training to create new products. That's not your expertise. So it's been a lot of burden on the craftspeople. And it's, there's some people were able to succeed. The people you're seeing today, the people on the presentation today are all artists. And so this is different from a craftsperson who makes, let's say, numerous things in the same design. They make repetitive production. So these repetitive production produces things for the general public. And they tend to be less expensive, they're more affordable. But the artists have galleries behind them, they have the gallery system, they have the whole they're more apt to be able to attract collectors from overseas. So they have much more of a support system behind them. So what Japan Craft 21 is supporting those craftspeople who don't have that support, and that's the vast majority. Those are the people that are decreasing in numbers rapidly. But the people you see today on the slides I was showing, these people have going practices and they're doing well.
I want to get to, we have a lot of questions coming in on the chat. So I want to get to let people who joined us today ask some of their questions. And many of them are specific about some of the things that you showed in the presentation. And I will ask, by name for some of the people who've had a question to turn on their camera and ask the question directly. Right. I'm not sure if Sterling is still with us. So let me just ask you. So you showed a picture of the indigo vats with
Yes.
somebody stirring lots of
Yes.
different ones. Were those different shades of indigo in the vats, or what differentiated those?
So that's a great question. The indigo vats are set into the ground, and they're all the same indigo, but they have different life spans on them. Or let's say different life ages. So indigo is made from it's a fermentation process. So you're taking a kind of composted material, just leaves that have been composted, and you mix it with an alkaline soda ash solution, and you place it into this vat, and it starts to ferment. The fermentation lasts for 3 months. So you have you'll have a very strong indigo solution in the young vats. But the older vats, the older they get, the weaker they become. So an indigo dyer will use those different vats in combination. Sometimes a piece may be dyed 20 times, 30 times. So some of the dyeing may be done in the weaker, and then the stronger and the weaker in a combination, so that they could utilize the older material and the newer material as well. Every artist, every craftsperson has their own formula about how the combination of how to do that.
Great. I see Sterling was struggling to turn on his microphone,
Yes.
so we'll give him another chance. Do you have another question, Sterling?
Yes, I do. Steve, I was just talking to this master blacksmith,
Yes.
and he was saying that where he got his training in the UK, that there were two different alternatives for becoming a blacksmith. One was to go through a 1 year internship at a university, and the other option was to go through a 4 year apprenticeship with an actual working blacksmith. Do they have something like that for bladesmiths in Japan?
Well, actually, one of our members is doing that. He has apprentices, and he's expanding into certain kinds of blades, and he created a cooperative for the entire area of blade making in the Hyogo prefecture. So I'm sure that there must be some places that have internships. I haven't heard of any, but there must be, and interns and apprenticeships are difficult to find, very difficult to find. He created 4 of them, and he saved the Ikebana scissors production in this whole district by that. And now he's marketing it in Europe, and it's really taking off. He's selling really well. So you know, a 1-year internship is basically getting your feet wet, I think. Typically, people say in Japan it's 6, 7 years of intense training before you can really be able to call yourself a craftsperson.
Thank you.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. You did.
It's so all over the place, and it can be very anecdotal. But yeah, blacksmithing in Japan, the blades. Of course, the Japanese blades are so extraordinary. They're legendary to this day. The Japanese scissors of all kinds. So. And just as a complete rabbit hole, one more point, they used to make this certain kind of steel, high carbon steel, in an area of in Western Japan, and with charcoal, and this is how they one place still does that for making swords. And this whole district had dozens and dozens of companies making that steel, and that all disappeared with modern steel production. And now our winner, the person I just mentioned, is creating a Tataras high carbon steel traditional place in that same district now. So it's starting to come back. And there's another company that has revived their work, 700-year-old company, and the latest generation, he's the 25th generation in that family. He's restarted his family's work that ended 100 years ago. So it's little things like this are starting to come back. It's very exciting.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of my questions have to do with, like, in Japan, can just like average tourist people who have a deep interest, like not just your average, that don't know anything about Japan, but have a specific interest that would like to really see or experience or have more of an experience, a tactile experience, maybe just to even be around the woodworkers or the kimono or I know that you can do some indigo dyeing, you can do some of these, they have some workshops, but I think even in a previous presentation that I was on, the question was, finding these experiential things that would help, I guess, deepen people's understanding, but also provide you with more membership or more interest or more like a broader outreach.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. There are numerous opportunities for people, visitors, to have maybe 1 or a 2-hour experience making something. Or there are numerous in Kyoto and also in other parts of Japan. This has become fairly common. And as a total snob, I was in the tour business for 30 years, running a tour company, and I always said I don't want to be involved with those hands-on things. And I have a 180-degree turn on that, because whenever I've had that 1-hour experience of knowing nothing about it, just physically doing something really opened my understanding. So I totally changed my point of view. And so I think that coming to Japan, you could probably set up a number of these visits in different parts of the country and have just an amazing experience. And hopefully that would bring people to assist us in our work, becoming members and followers of what we're doing. That would be great.
But the other thing too is I followed like just this Akia, homes that are abandoned, and people are coming from Australia and all over to try to renovate them, and they have problems finding woodworking people who are talented.
Yes.
Now, what you're doing is like high level craftsmanship,
Yes.
that would be very, very expensive. But is there a link between that high level of craftsmanship and then, rebuilding in a traditional manner that would be, acceptable and traditional-esque?
I wish there was a bigger link. I think of the 28 people we've trained so far, 17 of them have been in joinery. Wait a second, 5. Yeah, 17 and 18 in joinery. So these are carpenters who can do that work, but there are 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there were 1 million carpenters in Japan. 1 million. And
Wow.
every neighborhood had carpenters and people were doing all that kind of work. There are 200,000 now. 80% are gone. And at minimum I'm not talking about traditional carpenters. I'm just talking about carpenters who could do contemporary work, conventional work. And they're about 100,000 short. So, I think those numbers might tell you that it's, to have traditional people doing that kind of traditional craftspeople, repairing those Akia empty houses, I think it's a great idea.
One of the questions was, how much does a house like this cost? Do you have any? Is it comparable to contemporary modern construction, or?
No, it's much more. The idea is that if you can build 10 of them in the same place, then the price goes down about 30%. But generally speaking, to build a Japanese style, Kyoto style townhouse, machiya, it's probably going to cost about $600,000-$700,000. But this is a house that's going to last for 200 years. And then can be repaired.
Mhm.
It's a gem. And a typical house that's built conventionally now has a lifespan of 30 to 40 years, and people tear them down and rebuild. So it's
well, great. Well, I know that we told people the program would last through about now, so I'm going to bring the formal program to a close. Although, Steve, if you're willing to stay on a few more minutes,
sure.
in some of our other programs, I know we've had a nice kind of informal conversation afterwards. But let me bring the program to a close by thanking you for, again, sharing your expertise and your passion for traditional Japanese crafts with our audience. And let me also thank those of you who attended via introduction from some of our partner organizations. Thank you so much for coming. We will be sending out a survey shortly to get your feedback about today's program. And I know Steve always looks at the results that we share with him from our feedback surveys. So would appreciate it if you can do that. And then for those of you who want more of this type of programming, we have another program with Steve scheduled in June. Date is still not finalized, so we will post that on our website when we get the calendar set. And then 2 more programs later this year. But in the meantime, we have many other things. We just completed a program on Japanese art museums that is available via a video on our website. We have a program for those in the San Francisco Bay Area on the gaming industry. Of a networking reception coming up. We have one on agricultural technology coming up in a couple of weeks as well, and hope that you will be able to join us for some of those programs. So let me wrap up by encouraging people to come to our website, usajapan.org, where they can find information about our previous programs with you and other things that we're doing, and also view some of your videos there. And again, encourage people to support Steve's work with Japan Craft 21, just doing an amazing job helping to revitalize these vanishing crafts from the landscape. And so thank you for all of your work that you do on that front.
Building bridges between the United States and Japan since 1905. Japan Society.